If you've ever made a decision that looks smart and then regretted it later, this episode is for you. For a very long time, I thought playing it safe was the smartest thing to do for me and my life. I would constantly run through a mental checklist, weigh the pros and cons, and try to predict the outcome of the future. But there is a series of life decisions and life outcomes that taught me the hard way that safe can sometimes be the most dangerous path that you can take. In this episode, I'm going to break down the invisible traps that will lead you into overthinking and the mindset shifts that finally helped me make better decisions and faster decisions. So let's get into it. Trap number one is the certainty trap. I needed to be 100% sure before I moved, so I stayed stuck. All my life, I've made decisions that seem smart on the surface and that seem very logical. I always would tell myself that I needed a little bit more time, I needed a little bit more clarity before acting on a decision because I wanted to be 100% certain that this decision that I was going to make was actually going to work out and to minimize my chances of failure or not getting the outcome that I wanted as much as possible. That clarity never came. It never came no matter how hard and how much I chased it. And eventually the window would close on a lot of opportunities that I have had and a lot of things that I could have done a lot earlier in my life. I ended up not doing those things or doing those things much later because I was too afraid to take that risk and make a decision with only 80% certainty because I was chasing that 100% clarity. Chasing a 100% clarity on something and trying to be 100% sure before you move on and make a decision on something, it's like trying to see the entire staircase when you haven't even taken the first step. It's almost impossible to see what that end of the staircase is going to look like until you actually start climbing the staircase and you're getting closer to that staircase. You're not going to be able to see anything early on in that process. There's a decision that I wanted to make a couple of years ago where I was actually looking for a job and I was searching for a job. And I had a friend who works in the big tech industry and he worked for one of the top tech companies in the world. And there's a position that came open that was perfectly suited for me. It was tailor-made for my experience and my background. And I talked to my friend about it, and my friend was gracious enough to recommend me for that job and actually formally submit a recommendation. But here's the thing. When I got the recommendation from him, it required me to actually send in my resume and cover letter, and the process would get kicked off that way. But because I wanted to be 100% certain that I was going to get that job, I decided I was going to take my time and research and refine and sharpen my resume and create the best cover letter in the world. So that process actually ended up taking me about 4 days to do. And when I was ready to submit my resume and cover letter on Friday, I logged in, I opened up the recommendation, and I was getting ready to upload my documents, and at the top I saw highlighted in red that the job had just closed that morning, literally maybe 2 or 3 hours before. That was a window that closed. That was an opportunity that closed. That was something I could have potentially gotten at that time and been in that position at that time, but because I was chasing 100% certainty and clarity on my decision and on how I was presenting myself, that opportunity went away. And that's just an example of one thing that I lost on in my life. And there's been plenty more, and I'm sure you have had plenty more in your life too as well, of examples you can think of. So you should not wait for that clarity. If you're 80% certain of something, take it, move on it, and then be comfortable with that decision. Clarity comes after the decision, never before it. You will never have clarity. You will never be clear about something before you make that decision because you don't know what the outcome is. It's always after you make the decision and then you see the results. That's when you become clear. Which brings us into trap number 2, the outcome illusion. I believed the right decision would guarantee success. Going back to the job opportunity that I got stuck on, I got lost chasing perfection. I got lost chasing the perfect option. I delayed action, hoping for some magical guarantee that if I submitted my resume and cover letter, I was going to get that job 100%. That experience taught me quite a lesson that I haven't forgotten and I still remember to this day. And that is, no decision guarantees anything, and only waiting makes it worse. If you have a decision to make and you're faced with an opportunity, a decision, or you need to give an answer to something, if you're 80% of the way there, you spend most of your time chasing that 20% because you think that you can get that 20% and then feel extremely confident that that is the right move to make. But oftentimes we spend most of our time procrastinating in that 20%. That 20% is where people will spend days, in my case, maybe even weeks, months, years, trying to bridge that gap between the 80% and the 20% to get to that 100% certainty. And that's just a lot of wasted time. It's just a lot of wasted time. And it taught me a very valuable lesson. And I've taken that and implemented that in my life to now, when I make decisions, I always make a decision when I'm 80% of the way there, sometimes even less. Maybe there's rare occasions where I'm 100% certain, but if I'm 80% there, which is what I call the 80% rule, I go ahead and take that action. Trying to get to 100% certainty on decision making is like trying to predict the weather 6 months out when you're trying to book a trip. You might generally have an idea of what weather is like in that time frame 6 months out. You can look at historical trends, you can look at what's happened in the past, the time of the month, and you can kind of guess what the weather is going to be like, but you won't be 100% sure really until very close to that day, because the weather forecast might say one thing and then it might randomly rain that day. Who knows? So it's not very productive for you to be chasing that perfection and trying to predict the future outcome in that aspect. The best decision isn't the one with the best outcome. The best decision is the one that you take and you commit to. This brings us into trap number 3, and that is the shame spiral. When the decision backfired or when the decision didn't go right, I made it mean something about me. So you made a decision, you lost out on an opportunity, or you gave an answer that turned out to be wrong. The decision didn't work out, and then you spiral into self-blame. That's what I've done with a lot of decisions. Spiral into a loop of self-blame. You start to not trust yourself, lose trust in yourself, and it results in you avoiding risks so that you don't have to feel those emotions again, so that you don't have to feel that feeling of failure or that feeling of letting somebody down or letting yourself down because you made a decision that didn't turn out to be the right thing. Or in a lot of instances, there's a decision you didn't make and you lost out on something, or something didn't go the way that you want to. So I didn't realize in the past before how much shame I was putting on myself and how much that shame was slowing me down from making other decisions in my life. Because I had lost trust in my decision making, I was not confident in decisions in my career. I was not confident in decisions in my relationships. I was not confident in decisions in content creation. So everything slows down because of the lack of confidence and the lack of belief that the things that you do and execute on are actually going to result in positive results that matter and will actually move the ball forward for you. So failure isn't a verdict. That's the mindset you have to understand, and something I had to understand is failure isn't a verdict. It's feedback. Failure is data. When you fail at something, that's not an indictment on you as a person. When you fail at something, that is a data point that you can take and say, okay, this didn't work. Let me try something else. Okay, this path didn't work out. Let's go this path. That's how you need to look at failure. The ability to bounce back from that failure and that wrong decision is an ability that is going to propel you and actually give you more confidence and will allow you to make better decisions, believe it or not. The more you fail, the better decisions you're going to make, because you actually get better at knowing what not to do. That's a very weird thing to think about, because typically you think that the less you fail, the better your decisions are, but that is actually a trap. The less you fail typically means the less chances you're taking, the less risks you're taking, and the less opportunities you create for yourself. Making the wrong decisions doesn't mean you as a person are wrong. You are not broken. You're just learning. Playing it safe is not safe at all. Sometimes the safest thing that you can do is to move forward without all the answers. You actually don't need more clarity in your life. What you need is more courage. Clarity comes after you make the decision. You just need the courage to step forward, the courage to take that first step and be able to reap the benefits of the decisions that you make. If you've ever felt that every time you make a decision, you always end up second guessing yourself, you want to watch this episode right here where I walk through how I stopped second guessing myself and became confident in the decisions that I make.